some of the things that I wanted to hit on is I want to go a little bit into your role as global head of real estate workplace.
Mm-hmm. Dream job.
Yeah. So why is it a dream job?
Because I get to work at Twitter and I have an amazing team. And here I am in San Francisco, so you can hear I'm not a native of San Francisco.
I didn't notice.
So I actually started in our Dublin office in Ireland. I was working in London for a long time, and I was at Yahoo previously for 7 years. And then one day I was just thinking, what's the next up and coming tech company? Where do I want to go next? And I just went on Twitter and they tweeted out the job that I ended up applying for that day. It was design and construction, so finding our new spaces, building them out. It was workplace operations, so all of our facilities operations teams, and planning and transactions as well. So I was there for about a year and a half, and during that time, I kind of looked at how we were building out and designing our spaces, and it was very cookie cutter in terms of approach. So we looked at what we'd done over here in SF, and we were just rolling out the same thing everywhere, even down to the same carpet. And here in SF, we're in a really iconic old furniture market building. And so it's got a lot of personality, a lot of exposed concrete, and it's got a cool warehouse feel about it. But in other locations, we were going into high rises and just different types of building where we were taking a design that really worked here, but wasn't true to the bones of those buildings at all. And so it just looked either really forced or it just didn't work. So what we started doing was working with people locally, understanding how they use their spaces and what they wanted to see, but also trying to make it fit their culture more and understand if they were with clients or if they were going out after work, where were they going to, what were the spaces they really liked, had they seen other people's offices that they thought really worked and they felt kind of creative in them and just really loved them. And we took all those pieces of information and started making offices that just felt truer to that culture. We try and stay away from the cliched techie company stuff. For example, if you go in our London office, it's got more of a kind of a boutique London hotel feel, like Soho House type of feel, as opposed to, we have a black taxi meeting room and a red phone box meeting room because it's London. We've been doing this around a lot of the different spaces. So I did offices in Sao Paulo, Singapore, London, Dublin, so all over the world. And our then CEO came over. He saw our London space being built, and he really loved it. And 2 weeks later, I got a call which said, will you move to SF and be our head of design and construction? And I just thought for about 2 seconds and was like, yes, I'll come. Then I remembered I had a husband, asked him if he would want to move to America. Luckily, he did. And then I came over here, and it was 2014. I ended up heading up our design and construction team. And then when I was actually out on maternity leave in 2015, they gave me a call and said, would you lead the team? And I said, I'd love to, because it's Twitter and it's exciting, and I have a great team, and we build great spaces, and we have the best of the best within the team. So I'm really lucky to be in this job, and that's why I call it my dream job, because it is.
So right here, we're in a space called
The Blue
Room.
Mm-hmm.
So what's this space designed for?
So you should feel very special, because this is where our VITs come.
Oh, okay.
So when we have our very important tweeps, that is, like VIPs. So when we have visitors, so high-profile folks who use our platform, they come in here, and this is where they do their interviews. Sometimes we have internal events in here as well, but primarily it's used for when our VITs come in.
Cool, I feel very special. Thanks. Now that I'm a VIT, I can do
You
this.
can be demanding only blue M&Ms and baths full of Evian water.
I do like these chairs. I would request a similar chair.
Oh, good. I'm glad
you
we meet your expectations.
So I heard you speak at Future Office in New York.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I was looking at some pictures from the event, and I saw a screen share that you did, and it had people, and then it had the REW
team,
yeah. And I guess the overall feeling that I had, and from talking to you, is that it's a lot more about people and change management than it is about physical space and design.
Yeah, because it's human beings that use the space at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You know, it's people using the space. We could design something that looks super cool and amazing and wins loads of awards because it looks so great. But if people don't use it and they aren't proud to bring in their families and proud to bring in clients, it's kind of pointless. We've worked with architects before who've started off very much having an idea around how they want the space to look, and the thing that we've really impressed upon them is it's not so much about how the space looks. If it looks great afterwards, that's a bonus, and we definitely do want it to look great, but it's more about the people and those people using that space and that it fits their need. And I think our London site lead actually summed it up the best. He said, this is a workshop for us to do the very best work that we can ever do. And, you know, for someone to say that, that's kind of mission accomplished for us. We want it to be a space where people feel inspired and creative, but also I think we might be different from some other companies that talk about, you know, we want employees to hack the space and change it up and make it different. We just want people to be able to go into the space and start using it straight away, and for it to feel like it can fit a number of different needs. And so if you're an engineer that needs to sit and concentrate, you have a space that you can go to and do that. If you're in sales or if you're in a support team where you really need to collaborate, need to get a bit noisy and need to have some buzz, then the open plan is great. But what we try and do is also create neighborhoods. So you have the open plan, but you also have the meeting rooms you need. You have areas which are soft seating areas where you can go and brainstorm. We have whiteboards in the space. And so it's kind of trying to be flexible, but also you have that familiarity of you move into a space, you know you're going to get these certain things that are going to enable you to do your job effectively.
I love how you're talking about like surprising and delighting and improving the experience. And traditionally that doesn't seem to be aligned with corporate real estate and just real estate function. Mm-hmm. So why are you emphasizing #love where you work? What's that about?
So Love Where You Work goes back to our London office. So our London office was the first one that we kind of built out to these new design guidelines. And it was probably the biggest challenge I've had since I've been at Twitter. I've been here 5 years now. We had an employee, a marketing employee, who had been with Twitter since kind of the earlier days. And unfortunately, she got really, really sick and she ended up passing away. And I had never met her, and the team there were obviously really devastated by her. It was very close to the time when we were getting the new office, and they said, we want to do something in the space that will commemorate Lucy, but we don't want it to be something that's sad. And so I remember going home and thinking, oh my goodness, I could really mess this up. You know, what can we do that's going to commemorate Lucy, but it's going to be in a happy way, and also I've never met her, so how am I going to approach this? And so I thought, well, I'm going to look at her Twitter feed. You know, that's how I can get to know her, having not met her. So I went through her Twitter feed, and I found that the London employees, when they found out she was ill, had all got together and learned to knit. And so they'd all been knitting squares that they eventually, and they were knitting on the tube, knitting in meetings with clients. They were just knitting all the time. And then they put all these squares together and they created this huge blanket. I mean, it was massive. It was probably about 5 times bigger than it needed to be. But they'd made this, you know, blanket with love, and it meant a lot to them. And they sent it to Lucy. And Lucy had tweeted, you know, I love my Twitter family so much, #love where you work. And as soon as I saw #love where you work, I was like, that's it. That's the thing. So we sat down with the architects on the Monday, and I said, look, I think it'd be really great if we could make a really cool neon sign that's #love where you work. And we put it in the Commons, which is the heart of the Twitter space, where everyone gets together to eat and have important meetings, and just, you know, that's a space that's really important at Twitter. So we pitched it to the local team. They really loved it. They really liked it because obviously it was something that came from Lucy, but they also really liked it because it's not something you have to explain. You know, if a visitor comes in and goes, why is that #love where you work up there? They can just say, if they don't want to talk about it, we just love working here. You know, it's a hashtag that lots of people use, and we just love it. It means a lot to us. Or they can talk about Lucy and what she meant to them. But what's amazed me is since then, other offices have said, well, we work with Lucy, we want one too. And then other offices have said, well, we actually just love where we work and we really want that sign. And people now use it on the platform. If you put in #LoveWhereYouWork on Twitter, it will be a lot of Twitter employees making everyone sick about how much they love working at Twitter. But now it's in every single office, and we personalize it for each space, so it feels like a Chicago sign, or it feels like a San Francisco sign, or a London sign. But it's not what I expected to happen, and I think it's just such a really nice lasting legacy for Lucy. And so when our London employees come here and see it, it's really touching for them to see that kind of the memory of Lucy continues, and that she's there in the fabric of the space every day.
That's a beautiful story. I think one thing that I'm trying to understand is that there's a whole side of your job that's around listening, responding, improving the experience.
Yeah.
But then you also have the operation side, which is about cost savings and running an efficient building.
Yeah.
And those two seem pretty incongruous historically. And I'm wondering if you have a vision for a workplace that doesn't see them as kind of apart.
100%. I mean, I think the problem with real estate in the past has been, we're seen as these grey-suited folks who are just as the extra cost of the business, who go in and talk about square footage and leases and things that seem far removed from what the business do, and we don't make it clear how what we do can actually complement the business, and how we don't always have to be reactive and running after what the core business does, how we can actually enhance that by looking at opportunities. For example, say there's a new talent pool in a city where we could get really good, well-priced real estate. We should be pointing out opportunities for the business, not just running after them. I think the other thing that's important is that real estate's goals and the business goals have sometimes been, completely different. And the way that we look at building our goals, and we build new goals every quarter, those goals nest under the finance goals because we're part of the finance org, and the finance goals all nest under the company goals. So we're always thinking, what's important now, first of all? Never assume that what we were working on last year is still relevant this year, which is a hard balance for real estate. But also making sure that actually the things we work on are actually relevant to the business and complement what the business is doing. And when we sit down with a business unit or another peer support organisation, we're talking about, here's the value that we can bring to you. We're not imposing things on them. We're not being the no team, because I think that's the other thing. People think about real estate and they think, I'm going to get a no if I want to ask for this special kind of event, or I want this special kind of desk. It's about us taking requests and thinking about, well, maybe we can't do exactly what you're asking for, but we've got this other alternative. Or if you thought about approaching it in this way. So presenting ourselves as the experts in the room, not just this kind of service provider mentality of like we have to run after people and keep everybody happy. It's also about being the experts and showing that we have that expertise that can make their lives better and easier.
So how would you justify the investment in a workplace to someone who is of the world of ROI and pure building efficiency or historical real estate?
I think you can have both. You can be efficient with your space. That's why when we're looking at these ancillary spaces, it's multi-use. The space that you saw in New York, the speakeasy space, it's not just a coffee bar, it's an event space. People work down there. I think, real estate is only getting more expensive, especially here in SF. So you have to be able to use it in multiple different ways, and it has to be flexible. Like I said, when we design our desk spaces, they have to be flexible for different teams to move in and out of those spaces, and for us to have multiple uses of those spaces. So I think that's how we justify, the investment in the space, because you have all these different uses of the space. At the same time, where people work, especially in tech, and the look of the feel of that space is really important, because it is also a recruitment and retention tool. People walk in here and they see the great food that we offer in the canteen. They see the really nice library space where they can go and do some focus work. And if you think about, most people are spending most of their time at work. They spend more time here than they do with their families quite often. You want to be providing a space that they want to be in and they want to be proud of. In Twitter especially, Fridays, probably half the cafe is full of people's families because they want to bring them in and show off the space. And to me, that's a measurement of, that we've done a good job, that it's mission accomplished with the space, because they want to bring in families and they want to bring in friends. And so the space is important because I think it sets the tone of the company, and it's a physical embodiment of our culture and how we appreciate and approach our culture too. So I think that's how I would sell it to somebody who is very focused on the numbers and the dollars. My boss is also the chief accounting officer, so we report in through finance. So ultimately we report to the CFO. So the numbers have to stack up. We have to manage our spaces efficiently. We're in a company where initially when you start in a tech company, it's all about growth, growth, growth. Then you get a bit more mature and you're looking at how do you manage your space, your subleasing, that type of things. So it's not always about having tons of space and having loads of fancy areas. It's also about how we manage our space, how we bank it, potentially sublease it for the future. We work super close with HR to understand, and our FP&A teams to understand our headcount projections. So there's a scientific piece to it too. We have a business intelligence tool, so we can pull data and we can look at historical trends about how we've grown compared to, say, HR's projections. So there's a data piece to it, which, working in tech companies surrounded by engineers, data is really important to us too.
Talk to me a little bit about data. So how does data inform creating an optimal environment?
It's the foundation to everything that we do. So we actually have a business intelligence tool, which has a feed from our headcount tool, and that tells us everything about our spaces. So square footage, how much rent we're paying, we can pull meeting room ratios from it, we can understand all sorts of metrics, and we use that to be able to make decisions about basically investing in real estate in the first place. So we understand our vacancy and our occupancy, and we can be really credible then when we get in front of my boss, the CAO, and then ultimately the CFO, to either ask for additional space or to talk about, if we need to bank space for a while. So data is really important to everything that we do. So that's one side of it. And then obviously there's the side from when we're building out spaces and we're looking at, how many meeting rooms we need to build, what allocation of desks do we need to have, how big do our common spaces need to be. And so those are things that we try and use historical information around, and we try and look at our business intelligence tool as well and see if that can inform us when we're designing space. But more and more data is becoming the piece that you really need to be credible, that when you're sitting down with the CFO and trying to make decisions, and it's not just anecdotal information that you're presenting, then you have hard and fast facts that you can present and that they can really relate to.
So what kind of data sources or data pieces do you need to make that case?
A lot of the time it's in a company like Twitter, which is so fast moving, even getting information around headcount and getting everybody aligned around headcount is really difficult, which I know sounds crazy, but it's actually true. So having something where we plug in all of our headcount and who sits where, and we know exactly where each person within the company sits, is huge. And that's something that, and I think this is important around the real estate side, being impactful on the rest of the business, that not just we give those metrics to other pieces of the business to be able to make decisions too. So this is where real estate gets to make its footprint bigger than its foot. We're not just using our data to inform our decisions, we're actually giving it to other teams like HR to help them make their decisions too.
So in terms of data, that's kind of a big word now, right? Mm-hmm. There's IoT devices, there's a lot of different technologies that are in the workplace.
Yeah.
What do you think is going to happen with how people are approaching data collection in the workplace?
I think it's one of those areas that you have to be thoughtful about, because obviously there's people there and people don't like to be watched, and it's got to be scientific. It's kind of got to be not based on the individual, but by group and understanding how a group works. But I definitely think it's something that's going to become more and more prevalent, and people are going to want to see the data behind decisions, and they're going to want to understand, how space is used and the human part of that. And I think it goes back to what we were talking about before as well. Sometimes you'll design a space and people don't actually use it in the way that you expect them to use it. They use it in a completely different way that you may never have ever thought of. And I think that those types of devices and those kinds of ways to gather those data will be central to understanding that.
Very cool. Well, music to my ears. Yeah.